I'm Vigalius, and we made it. Last week we made it to the peak of Halo, to the peak of the mountain of Halo, and now begins the slow descent downhill from the peak. But we actually have one more place to stop off before we get there. One final foray into the Halo Bungie sphere. Halo 3 ODST, or a tremendously underappreciated game. Underappreciated in its time and to an extent now, but I think in hindsight we are able to look at things differently. I'm not a huge fan of using hindsight to look at things differently, but I think here it's a bit of a unique case. The issue with Halo 3 ODST is that it was the sequel to Halo 3, which was one of the most successful and beloved video games of all time. And this game was essentially a 4 to 5 hour campaign and firefight mode. There was no multiplayer here. You did get a multiplayer disc, however, which was the Halo 3 multiplayer with all the DLC, which means if you had never played the Halo 3 multiplayer, tremendous deal. If you had, not so much. And if you had Halo 3 and all of the DLC, then this disc was, essentially pointless. So it was just a campaign for you, and for a lot of people ODST was for the fanatics, for the people who absolutely loved Halo, and those would be the people who've already purchased the DLC. So I do understand how frustrating that is. I will say, however, that I think a lot of people had issues with how much progress had been made from Halo 3 to ODST. This game, for all intents and purposes, runs on it runs on the same engine, and it plays tremendously similarly, and I think a lot of people were sort of tripped up by that and caught up by that and thought, well, this just isn't good enough. Here's the thing though, isn't it quite interesting how by today's standards this would be a giant leap for the game? The changes from 3 to ODST are actually quite large. The gameplay itself does actually feel quite a bit different. The visuals are at the core the same, but they're a little bit more animated. The guns are modeled the same, but they're kind of presented in a different way. It's hard to explain. That makes them look a little bit more cartoony. The physics are slightly different because you're not playing as the Master Chief here. You're playing as the more grounded ODST. You can't jump as high. There is fall damage now, and the whole overall game feels a bit different. Grenades throw way further. The grenade is a huge change. You have your visor now, so that you have these outlines during these dark night sections, and that brings me to a big difference, which is this game has an open world. You can actually traverse through this open world, which was something you could never do in a Halo game previously. The closest we came was CE. This is a fully open world that you can just drop into and explore.
Oh. How you gonna shoot me now, dickhead? Oh, fuck.
And all of these changes came from 3 to ODST, and people still said that it wasn't a big enough leap, there wasn't enough changed. And I don't wholeheartedly disagree for the time, but nowadays, like I said, this would be a massive leap, given that most games are just like the previous game but tweaked a little bit here and there. For such huge changes to be made, I think it's a big deal, and not just to the gameplay and to the visuals, the atmosphere. This game took an entirely different approach to atmosphere, but the game, atmosphere was equally as important as it was with Halo 3. With Halo 3, the atmosphere was all about the space opera, how macro things can be, how giant things could be, and the atmosphere was created by how large the scale could become. The fleeting piano keys that danced across the soundtrack created this large-scale, epic but emotional situation that was raucous and loud and giant. Whereas here, they took such a bold leap. I really didn't. I think to the Halo fan, you would never have seen this coming, and it was bold and ballsy and totally worth it, because this game it goes from the biggest macro giant space opera to the most subdued noir style story, which, like I said, no one saw coming, and totally you would think wouldn't fit the genre, but they made it work so tremendously well that it was kind of shocking. I mean, a lot of the game is set at night. It's a lot slower, so you sleuth around the city. Stealth is a bigger, has a bigger emphasis in this game.
There's no point messing with me, because I'm just gonna kick your ass. Ah, come on. Oh, yeah. What a knob.
It will like rain, and everything is very dramatic in its dark and gloomy lighting. The overall the game is very gloomy, and yes, we have to address it. The exceptional soundtrack, absolutely phenomenal soundtrack. We thought that Salvatore and Marty O'Donnell had cooked to their highest extent with Halo 3 and 2 or 3, and I do agree, but this, man, how they came off of that with this, made a completely different soundtrack that sounds absolutely stunning, so gloomy, so atmospheric, and it really sets the tone absolutely perfectly. And the reason I'm talking so much about the atmosphere is because I think that's this game's biggest strength. The story is pretty good. I don't know what happened to me there. The story is pretty good, and you do like the characters, and you do appreciate, you do follow what's going on. You want to know what happens next, during the aftermath of all of this war-y stuff. But it's the atmosphere in which the storytelling is encapsulated that is just so brilliant. And at the time, I had never seen a game that managed to capture an atmosphere like that and so expertly before. It was absolutely amazing. And like I said, that's the biggest strength to this game. Yes, there are missions. Yes, there's lots of action to be had. And in the footage I show you, there's going to be lots of action because I don't want to, spoil that atmosphere for you when it comes into it. But it's all about the atmosphere. It's all about sleuthing around these cities and getting an open world look at this game for the first time. Something that we only came back to, God, what was it? 11 years? No, 12 years? 12 years later with Halo Infinite. That was the only other time that we had an open world, so that's absolutely amazing. And Firefight was a completely different beast back then. It was a lot harder. It was a lot more like the Gears of War Horde mode, where you're not actually supposed to get to the end of it. You're supposed to just long it out for as long as you can. It is possible to get to the end, but it's tremendously difficult, and I think that works here. We've had 3 very different experiences for Firefight, and I've liked each one, but I think the OG is the hardest, most nail-biting version, and definitely has its advantages, and I think for the most part is probably the most intense and interesting in terms of gameplay. And it was also, like I said, the first time that we got Firefight mode in Halo, and it was something a little bit different, and there were different characters to unlock, and of course with ODST we got the Vidmaster challenges. I've already gone through those with Halo 3, but this was when we got those Vidmaster challenges.
These are alien symbols. That means the toilet, the men's room, is this way, and that one means that one means the door. Let's go.
All in all, it's such a shame to see people focus on something that genuinely, they have every right to focus, or had every right to focus on. It's even sadder to think back on it now, on this game that I didn't have to pay anything for. It came bundled with my Master Chief Collection, or a game that is just sat on a 360 disc in my collection of games, and that I can just pick up, and I don't have to think about how much I spent on it or what its value or worth was at the time or is now. And so something that I can just fully appreciate for what it is. And it wouldn't matter if it was a 2-hour experience, a 3-hour experience. This was something entirely different, and something truly, truly very beautiful. It is a very beautiful game, and the fact that they managed to turn a space opera, a giant sci-fi FPS shooter, first-person shooter, a space opera experience into something subdued and noir and just absolutely beautiful is staggering to me. And I am going to give this a very high score because I think it always deserved it. So here it is. And that's that. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy sleuthing around ODST. You're not going to, it's a video game, but I'll see everyone later.
The PlayStation's only $149, and you can also get leading titles.